Have you ever felt like you were made for more, but somehow you just keep circling the same place? You know you're capable. You know you have vision. You know there's another level in you. And yet, every time you start getting serious about growth, something pulls you back. Sometimes it's fear. Sometimes it's doubt. Sometimes it's circumstances that feel beyond your control. But a lot of times, it's your environment. And that's what I want to talk about today. Because one of the hardest truths to accept is this. Sometimes the people closest to you are not pushing you towards your next level. They're pushing you toward what's familiar, what's safe, what feels manageable, what keeps you comfortable. And I need to be clear from the beginning. That does not always make them bad people. Sometimes the people who love you the most still give you advice that's rooted in their fear, their limitations, their experiences, and their need for stability. Sometimes they mean well. Sometimes they want to protect you. Sometimes they genuinely care. But well-meaning advice can still mislead you. And if you don't learn how to filter the information you receive, you can spend years obeying voices that sound loving, but are actually leading you away from growth. So today, I want us to have a real conversation about your circle, your environment, and your ambition, and why some of the information that you are receiving may be training you to choose comfort over calling. Let's get into it. Comfort rarely announces itself as a problem. One of the reasons comfort is so dangerous is because it does not usually feel dangerous in the moment. Comfort feels peaceful. Comfort feels familiar. It feels supported. Comfort feels like people saying, I just don't want you to do too much. Comfort feels like people saying, be careful. Comfort feels like, maybe now is not the right time. It feels like, you have something good. Why risk it? Comfort sounds responsible, sounds wise, sounds practical. And that's exactly why so many gifted professionals and entrepreneurs get stuck there. Because nobody just wakes up and says, today I want to sabotage my own growth. No. What happens is much more subtle. You start listening to the voices around you. You start measuring your future through the lens of people who are attached to your current version. You start shrinking your ideas so they can fit inside the conversations that were never designed to stretch you. And before you know it, you're calling it peace when it really is stagnation. You're calling it timing when it really is hesitation. You're calling it wisdom when it's really fear dressed up in mature language. That is why this conversation matters so much, because not every calm season is confirmation. Not every supportive voice is strategic, and not every piece of advice deserves access to your decisions. Your circle may be loving, but still limits you. This is the part that most people don't want to hear. Everybody who loves you is not automatically qualified to advise you. And let me say that again. Everybody who loves you is not automatically qualified to advise you. Because love and alignment are not always the same thing. Someone can love you deeply and still not understand your vision. Someone can care about you and still be uncomfortable with your expansion. Someone can want the best for you and still define best through the lens of safety instead of purpose. That does not make them malicious. It makes them human. A lot of people give advice based on what they survive, not on what you're called to build. A lot of people give advice based on what feels secure to them, not on what is possible for you. A lot of people speak from their own ceiling and then call it wisdom. And if you are not careful, you will internalize their limitations as if they're instructions for your life. This is especially true for professionals and entrepreneurs. If you are building a business, stepping into a leadership position, changing industries, increasing your visibility, charging what you're worth, writing the book, launching the brand, applying for the role, moving into bigger moves. You're going to hear opinions, a lot of opinions. Some will sound caring. Some will sound logical. Some will sound protective. Some will sound spiritual. Some will sound like common sense. But the real question is not just, does this sound good? The real question is, where is this information leading me? Is it leading me toward growth? Or is it leading me toward comfort? Because those are not always the same direction. Well-meaning people often give comfort-based advice. Now let's talk about this honestly. Well-meaning people often give advice that is more about emotional safety than destiny. They say things like, don't put yourself out there too much. Maybe you should wait until everything is perfect. Why leave what's stable? Why take that kind of risk? You should just be grateful for what you have. Don't aim too high. Start small, stay small. Maybe that space is not for people like us. Maybe you shouldn't charge that much. Maybe you should not speak so boldly. Maybe you should not make such a big move right now. Now, some of that advice may have a piece of wisdom in it. I'm not saying ignore caution. I'm not saying become reckless. I'm not saying every bold move is automatically the right move. What I am saying is this. You have to learn how to filter information, because information that sounds loving can still produce smallness if you don't examine the source, the motive, and the fruit. You have to ask, is this advice helping me become more disciplined, more strategic, more developed, more prepared, and more courageous? Or is this advice just helping me avoid discomfort? Because discomfort is not always danger. Sometimes discomfort is growth. Sometimes discomfort is what happens when you outgrow old thinking. Sometimes this discomfort is what happens when you're entering rooms that require a bigger version of you. Sometimes discomfort is what happens when your life starts demanding that you stop living beneath your potential. And many well-meaning people confuse discomfort with disaster. So they tell you to stay where it's easier. Stay where you're understood. Stay where you don't have to explain yourself. Stay where your ambition is small enough to be digestible. Stay where your growth does not threaten anybody else's sense of normal. But you can't become who you are called to be if all your decisions are filtered through other people's comfort. Now, how to filter the information you receive. This is the key right here. If you are serious about growth, you need an internal filtering system. You can't just receive every opinion equally. You can't allow every voice the same level of access. You can't treat all advice as though it carries the same weight. You have to filter. So what does that look like? First, ask yourself, who is this coming from? Not from a place of arrogance, but from a place of wisdom. Does this person have the kind of life, discipline, mindset, courage, leadership, or fruit that aligns with where I'm trying to go? Because if someone is consistently driven by fear, why would fear-based counsel become your roadmap? If someone has never built what you're trying to build, why would their uncertainty become your conclusion? If someone has chosen a smaller life out of preference, pain, or survival, it's their story, but it does not have to become your standard. Second, ask yourself, what is the root of advice? Is it rooted in faith, strategy, experience, wisdom? Or is it rooted in fear, insecurity, projection, or the need to control outcomes? Third, ask, what does this advice produce for me? Does it produce clarity? Does it produce courage? Does it produce preparation? Does it produce wise action? Or does it produce hesitation, shrinking, delay, self-doubt, or emotional paralysis? Because sometimes you can't tell word for word the effect it has on your spirit. Some advice may sound practical, but every time you sit in it, It makes you feel smaller. That matters. Fourth, ask yourself, is it leading me towards discipline or towards avoidance? This one is big. Healthy advice may slow you down so you can prepare well. Unhealthy advice will stop you altogether. Healthy advice may tell you to get sharper, get counsel, create a plan, strengthen your systems, and move wisely. Comfort-based advice often tells you to wait indefinitely until all risk is gone. And let's be honest, if you wait until there's no discomfort, no uncertainty, no stretch, and no possibility of failure, you're probably never going to move. Growth usually requires movement before you feel fully ready. So filter the information carefully. Not every warning is wisdom. Not every concern is discernment. Not every delay is divine. Not every be careful is God. Sometimes it's fear, talking through familiar voices. A lot of people want support, but not many people want sharpening, because sharpening is uncomfortable. Sharpening asks better questions. Sharpening calls out excuses. Sharpening challenges your habits. It doesn't lead you behind business. Sharpening does not romanticize procrastination. It does not allow your potential to stay in theory. And if you're building anything meaningful, you need that. You need people who can love you and still tell you the truth. You need people who can celebrate you and still challenge you. You need people who can say, yes, that's a great vision. Now, what is your plan? You need people who can say, I believe in you, but I also need you to stop playing small. You need people who can say, you keep saying you want more, but your habits don't reflect that. You need people who can say, you're not stuck. You're just protected by overcomfort. That kind of circle is valuable because a comfort circle will soothe your feelings. A growth circle will strengthen your future. A comfort circle tells you what is understandable. A growth circle reminds you what's possible. A comfort circle helps you stay safe. A growth circle helps you become better. And at some point, you have to decide which one you really want. Do you want constant reassurance or do you want transformation? Because sometimes these two things don't sound the same. Growth requires new conversations. One of the clearest signs that you have outgrown your environment is when the conversations around you no longer match the level you're trying to reach. If every conversation is about problems, drama, limitations, and survival, that does something to your thinking. If every conversation is reactive instead of visionary, that affects your imagination. If every conversation normalizes settling, eventually settling starts to feel wise. You can't keep feeding small conversations and expect to produce a big life. Professionals need conversations about leadership, execution, communication, visibility, innovation, discipline, strategy, and growth. Entrepreneurs need conversations about systems, sales, mindset, resilience, expansion, stewardship, and sustainability. If you're always one bringing the vision into the room and nobody knows how to build it, stretch it, or refine it, you need new conversations. That might mean mentorship. That might mean coaching. That might mean a new community. That might mean intentionally entering rooms where you are not the most advanced person there. And yes, that can feel uncomfortable. But discomfort in the right room is better than confidence in the wrong one. I want to say that again. Discomfort in the right room is better than confidence in the wrong one. Because the right room may humble you, but it will also grow you. You have to stop outsourcing your courage. This is where many people get stuck. They keep waiting for everybody around them to agree before they move. They keep waiting for full validation before they obey what's on their heart. They keep waiting for people that are closest to them to understand the vision before they start acting on it. But sometimes the people around you are not going to understand until after you move. Sometimes the confirmation comes after the obedience. Sometimes your circle can't validate a future they do not have the capacity to see. That is why you can't outsource your courage. You have to develop the ability to hear wisdom, weigh it carefully, and still move in the direction of growth when necessary. You have to stop requiring consensus for every next step. Because if you need everybody to be comfortable with your calling before you move, your life will be built around their preferences, not your purpose. And that's not leadership. That is permission dependency. And at some point, maturity looks like this. I hear your concern. I appreciate your love. I value your perspective, but I also know what I need to do next. That's not rebellion. That's discernment. That's self-leadership. That's growth. What filtering looks like in real life. Let's make this practical. Maybe someone tells you, you should not raise your prices. People are not going to pay that. Now, instead of automatically shrinking, you filter it. Is this coming from someone who understands value, positioning, and business strategy? Or is this coming from someone who is uncomfortable with charging more because they have their own money fears? Maybe someone tells you, you don't need to speak so boldly. Just stay low key. You filter it. Is this wisdom about timing and delivery? Or is this discomfort with your visibility? Maybe someone tells you, why leave that job? It's stable. You filter it. Is this advice rooted in thoughtful planning? Or is it rooted in the belief that stability matters more than alignment? Maybe someone tells you, don't apply. They're probably looking for someone else. You filter it. Is that truly insight? Or is that a projection of their own limitations and fears? This is how you protect your growth. Don't become closed off. Don't become defensive. Don't assume that nobody has anything valuable to say. But by becoming discerning, you can stay teachable without being easily redirected. You can stay humble without becoming passive. You can receive counsel without surrendering your calling. That's the balance. Your next level may require relational pruning. Now let's talk about the uncomfortable part. Sometimes growth requires you to change who has access to your mind, your energy, your dreams, and your developing vision. That does not always mean cutting people off dramatically. Sometimes it simply means changing proximity. It means not sharing every idea with everybody. It means not looking for deep strategic advice from people who are really committed to comfort. It means not exposing your vision to people who are in chronic doubt. It becomes more about being intentional with your inner circle, because everybody does not know how to handle growth. Sometimes people only know how to celebrate what's familiar, but your future is too important to keep placing it in the hands of people who can only advise the old version of you. There are some conversations you need to have with mentors, some with peers who are growing, some with people who have already walked the path, and some things need that you really need to protect until you're strong enough to understand that unnecessary commentary. That's wisdom. So here's what I want to leave with you today. Your circle matters. Your environment matters. The voices you consistently listen to matter. And if you're feeling stuck, delayed, hesitant, or unusually comfortable while knowing there's more in you, you just have to examine your goals. Examine your inputs. Examine the information you keep receiving. Examine the conversations you keep entertaining. Examine the people shaping your normal. Examine the advice that keeps sounding good, but keeps producing smallness. And then ask yourself honestly, is this leading me toward comfort, or is it leading me toward growth? Because You can't build a bigger life with a mindset that is constantly being managed by other people's fear. You can't become who you are meant to be by staying loyal to every opinion that asks you to remain small. You can't keep choosing what feels safest and then wonder why you're not expanding. Some of you don't need more talent. You don't need more potential. You don't need more ideas. You need better filters. You need greater discernment. You need stronger boundaries around what gets to shape your decisions. You need circles that sharpen you. You need environments that challenge you. You need conversations that call you higher. And you need the courage to recognize when well-meaning voices are leading you toward comfort instead of growth. Because the goal is not just to be supported. The goal is to be developed. The goal is not just to be loved. The goal is to be stretched into the fullness of who you are becoming. So don't be afraid to outgrow what once fit. Don't be afraid to question advice that sounds kind, but keep producing delay. Don't be afraid to protect your future from voices that only know how to honor your past. And don't be afraid to choose rooms, relationships, and rhythms that demand more from you. Because sometimes the biggest threat to your next level is not failure, it's familiarity. And sometimes the breakthrough begins when you finally realize your circle may be keeping you comfortable. If this spoke to you, I want you to take a moment and really reflect. What voices have been shaping your decisions lately? What advice have you been following? And has it been making you better or just making you feel safer? Let that question sit with you. And if this message resonated with you, share it with someone who may need the reminder that growth requires more than support. It requires discernment. I'll see you in the next video.